Welcome to the AMATYC Midwest Region Math Bonanza, and my name is John Oakes, and I'm the AMATYC Midwest Vice President. And let's see, our website is amatyc.org/Midwest. And so now I am going to actually stop sharing my screen so that our presenter can pull up the PowerPoint slides, and I can try to find the biography that you sent me, Fran, but I'm on my Mac, and so it's buried behind the PowerPoint, so I can try to find it, or if you would like to say.
No worries. I can introduce myself. No
Okay,
biggie.
all right.
And I have actually a slide on introduction just because I remember not having that conversation with you.
Well, I know that you sent me a biography, and then I sort of was not expecting to be on my Mac. So I appreciate you taking it from here, and I appreciate you being here. So I'll just turn off my mic and turn it over to you. But if you need anything, just yell at me and if something doesn't seem to be going correctly.
All right. Can everybody see my PowerPoint or not yet? All right. Excellent. So we're going to have a little conversation about equity, and I'm standing up in my office. I see everybody's backgrounds in their offices. Please ignore the coffee pot in the back and my posters, etc. We're going to talk about a little bit of equity in the classroom, but before I do that, most of you are professors in mathematics, and now let me. No, it's showing pretty well. All right, so I have a completely different background than you all. So my name is Frances Canedo. I have doctors of education and educational leadership and policy analysis. But before that, I did finance and economics. And then when I moved to the US, because I only moved here to the US about 14 years ago, I worked in finance. I worked in private companies. And when I moved here to the United States, I moved here in 2006, just at the beginning of the recession. And as many immigrants to this country, you learn to be resourceful. And I poked my head into the foreign languages department at East Tennessee State University here in Tennessee in Johnson City. And one of the chair of the lower level Spanish program said, "You have a master's?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "You're a native speaker?" And I said, "Yes, I'm a native speaker of Spanish." And immediately I became a Spanish instructor. And for the last 14 years, that's what I've been doing. I became the chair of the foreign languages here at my community college about 10 years ago. And 2 years ago, I became the Dean of Humanities for my community college. NESCC, that's Northeast State Community College, that's where I work. I'll make sure to give you some more information about my institution. But I think it's also important to know where I'm coming from, because I see that a lot of you are from Michigan and other parts of the country. The demographics here in Northeast Tennessee are very stark. So the population is 97% white. There's only about 1.2% of Latinos here. There's about 1.7 of African American or Black, and everybody else lives outside this area. We are about an hour and a half east from Knoxville, but it feels like we're 40 years behind. So a lot of the stuff that I'm gonna be presenting comes from this background, so just so you have an idea of where I'm coming from. So when we talk about equity in instruction, we talk about excellent instruction that helps everyone, but those are students that need the most help. And they don't necessarily need help because they are not up to par with other students, but because of their background. So changing instruction, of course, takes effort. In some cases, you're going to need institutional help. You're going to need a coach from your friends. You're going to need peers that give you resources. So by the end of this, I have a lot of resources. Many of them are for the humanities, not necessarily for math, because that is my background. But I hope that they can help. And I went online and checked for several resources for math professors. And I was really, really impressed with the amount of information that is out there. Of course, I don't teach math, so I don't know exactly the things that you will use. But talking about inclusive classrooms, you know, it's across the board, little things that we can do. I forgot to mention that my dissertation topic was on LGBT. I thought I had put it here. Oh no, I did put it here. My research is on LGBTQ inclusiveness in community colleges. So I work a lot with our LGBTQ students here on campus and across the state, because I did my research along with TBR, the Tennessee Board of Regents. They helped me a lot with my research on all 13 community colleges. All right, so, oops. All righty then. So what are the focus questions that we're gonna address today? You know, first, what is equity and what is equity in the classroom? Why is equity so hard and why do we have to talk about it? And I would like to hear from you if your institutions are doing something that is already equitable, and how can we move along, and what can we shift in our classroom? What can we shift in our environment that will make our classrooms more equity oriented? So a couple of statistics, I had to put them there. This is the enrollment by gender for our institutions for two-year colleges. This is the National Center for Education and Statistics. We keep seeing more female students enrolled in our colleges. And this is important because we're going to talk about stereotyping. And of course, the stereotype with STEM and females and women is that women are not as good at STEM as men are. And of course, we're going to talk about stereotypes in just a little bit. And if you look at enrollment by race, by 2016, you know, 56% of enrollment was still of white white students. I did not take into account enrollment by religion because I didn't think that that was going to be an issue here, but that's something else to account for, depending in the area in which you live. And the area in which I live is very much so very Christian Protestant. So that also changes a lot of the things that we can talk about in the classroom. We live in the Bible Belt here in Tennessee. All righty then, oops. All right, so let's talk about what is equity. And these are not dictionary resources. These are things that came out of research done either by the Asia Society or the National, I actually went to the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics and found some really good concepts. So equity in education means that personal or social circumstances such as gender, ethnic origin, or family background are not obstacles to achieving educational potential. That should be the case. But I don't know if you can see my bolded are not obstacles for educational potential. They should not be, because they are issues in our classrooms. We see that students with socioeconomical background tend tend to fare worse in community colleges. They drop out at bigger rates. Latinos, first generation, second generation immigrants tend to do worse, but it also depends on where they are immigrants from. There's also this stereotype that Asians do much better at math and STEM than other groups, but that's just an issue of opportunity in some cases and an issue of language. In the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, this was really good because they talked about equity-based mathematics teaching requiring more than implementing new curriculum or using a specific practices, because it involves taking a stand for what is right. I found that very interesting. It involves noticing students, learning about the worlds that they live in, and building mathematics that comes from these worlds. And that should be the case for everything. It should be the case for English learners, for humanities, for history. We should be talking about, we should be including topics from the worlds of our students into our teaching. You probably have seen this little graph. It talks about what is equality, and equality, of course, is giving everybody the same resources to do the job. So when we give everybody in our classroom the same book, the same time, the same resources, the same tutors, whatever is that we're providing at our schools, we tend to give a blanket resource for everyone. So we're trying to treat everybody the same. Equity, on the other hand, tries to understand what are the issues our students are facing and try to give some support in that area so that they can have the same achievement as our other students. We're not saying that those students need to achieve better than the rest of our students, just the same. Now, what reality looks like is more like this, right? We have students that are starting way behind than other students, and we have students that have a lot more resources, economical or background, mobility, any of that. So this is what it looks like. So the US education system of inequality, this little PowerPoint that I found, it says, students who are born into advantages increase their advantage while others can't catch up or fall further behind. So I tried, let me show you this. Many of you probably have seen this video. If it doesn't play, it does not play. I have it right here. Give me just a second. Let me share that screen. So you might have seen this video, but let's take 4 minutes to watch this. I think it explains really well what equity is.
Francis, I think you might want to change your audio settings so that it picks up the audio from the video.
We'll take this.
So the only way
Let me double check what the issue with my audio is.
Well, I think the only way to do that, like, you'll have to stop the sharing for a moment and then reshare and then check the little box that says share.
Share with audio. Oh, yeah. Thank you. See, always with the. Share computer sound. There we are. Thank you.
Everybody line up. We're about to race. Everybody line up. Shoulder to shoulder. Take off your backpacks. Basketball. Line up. We're about to race. Hey, we are racing for a $100 bill. The winner of this race will take this. It's a $100 bill. Before I say go, I'm going to make a couple statements. If those statements apply to you, I want you to take 2 steps forward. If those statements don't apply to you, I want you to stay right where you're at. Take 2 steps forward if both of your parents are still married. Take 2 steps forward if you grew up with a father figure in the home. Take 2 steps forward if you had access to a private education. Take 2 steps forward if you had access to a free tutor growing up. Take 2 steps forward if you've never had to worry about your cell phone being shut off. Take 2 steps forward if you've never had to help mom or dad with the bills. Take 2 steps forward if it wasn't because of your athletic ability, you don't have to pay for college. Take 2 steps forward if you never wondered where your next meal was going to come from. I want you guys up here in the front just to turn around and look. Every statement I've made has nothing to do with anything any of you have done. Has nothing to do with decisions you've made. Everything I have said has nothing to do with what you've done. We all know these people up here have a better opportunity to win this $100. Does that mean these people back here can't race? No. We would be foolish to not realize we've been given more opportunity. We don't want to recognize that we've been given a head start. But the reality is we have. Now, there's no excuse. They still got to run their race. You still got to run your race. But whoever wins this $100, I think it'd be extremely foolish of you not to utilize that and learn more about somebody else's story. Because the reality is, if this was a fair race and everybody was back on that line, I guarantee you some of these black dudes would smoke all of you. And it's only because you have this big of a head start that you're possibly going to win this race called life. That is a picture of life, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing you've done has put you in the lead that you're in right now. When I say go, on your mark, get set, go! If you didn't learn anything from this activity,
Sorry, I did not unmute myself. That's an error I keep having. Let me stop sharing here. And let me share my PowerPoint again. Here we are. So I would like to hear from you. Oops, it's gonna make me go back here. I would like to hear from you and tell me how does the video explain some of the things that happen in your classroom. Can anyone jump in? Oh, we instructors are worse than our students. When we ask someone to speak up, we usually don't. Come on.
You know, I would say that they just don't have not everybody has the same supplies. Not everybody can get the calculators that we need. Not everybody can, even like right now, have a computer to get online at home or internet or those kinds of things.
That is
so,
excellent.
yeah. A lot of it is just not having available to you what's definitely going to help you in a classroom, or the tutors, you know.
Like, so access is a big thing, right? We talk about access to the college. Do you have good transportation to come to class? Do you have a reliable car to come to class? Are you missing school because you don't have those resources, right? And if I am absolutely draconian on, let's say, my attendance policy, am I not allowing the students that may have some sort of issue that they may not want to talk to you about? Are we not allowing them, or are we stopping them from being better students and doing better in the classroom, right? You talk about calculators. We have this idea, not only calculators or computers or laptops that can manage the software that we require for our classes. We have this assumption that everybody has a cell phone. Well, yes, everybody may have a cell phone, but we may rely on the internet at school to access the internet. We might not have minutes to make a call. Yes, we might have a phone to receive some calls or to call for emergency, but we might not have data. So how are those students doing the homework at home if they don't have those resources, right? Let me think about other issues that we have encountered here. What if our, like I said, transportation? We saw, there was a study, and I think this is a person you should investigate, math people. Dr. Tristan Dentley, he is now the chancellor of the Georgia System of Education. He's a statistician. He studied at Oxford. He is fantastic. He used to be the vice chancellor for academic affairs here in the state of Tennessee for the Tennessee Board of Regents. Now he moved to Georgia. He talked to us about when he was working at a college. They found out for some reason, something like 87% of their African-American students didn't come back as spring. And they couldn't understand why. It was absolutely insane. 87% just did not come back. And when they started doing some research and started calling people and asking why they were not coming back, it was because the city had moved the bus routes. And because the city had moved the bus routes, the students could not get to campus directly. So it had moved the bus routes from a specific area that had a high density of Black and African American students, and it passed across the school. Well, they changed that line, so students could no longer get to the school. So, you know, think about those things. We talked about computers. Another thing was just financial issues. Do you have a system in your classes that is an online system that they have to purchase in order to do the work? That actually has a name. It's called pay to pass. And when I learned about this, I was appalled because I was doing this. I was asking my students, because it was, you know, the publishers tell us all these things. The publishers give us a book. They give us a book and say, you know, all these exercises are there. All the exams are loaded. It will integrate with your learning management system. You won't have any issues. It's all done for you. And we take those books and resources and we use them in our classroom. Well, they're $200, $300. So if a student is on financial aid or Pell or anything else, those $200 are going to make the difference on their life, but they're also going to make the students' difference in your class, because they're going to have to pay that in order to do everything in your class, all the homework, all the exams. So there should be another way in which they can earn points in your class if that is not a possibility, right? If there's not a possibility to purchase those resources. So little things like that you can start thinking about the things that happen in your classroom. You know, taking account for this, not blaming the students for the prior lack of opportunity, the access, the exposure to skills they need to succeed. Sometimes we do this in the classroom. we ask which high school they came from, or which professor they had, or which instructor they had previously. And we tend to blame the student or blame the previous instructor for what the students know or don't know. And I think instead of doing that, actually giving resources to those students and say, hey, you know, I've noticed that sometimes students from your institution or from your high school come with a deficiency in this area. May I offer you some resources that you can take home and review, instead of just blaming them for being at another school, right? We also need to, as instructors, we need to accept responsibility for teaching the students that learn differently and that have a completely different level of understanding of what we're doing. Foreign languages is it's a learning block. Everything we do is a learning block, pretty much like it is in mathematics. I usually tell my students that my class is kind of like a math class, because it's not only a building block, everything can be seen in an equation. Spanish grammar is one equation of subject, verb, and predicate. It's very easy. But my students do not know comparative grammar. And for me, I actually have to go back to 3rd grade and teach them English grammar in order for them to learn a foreign language, right? So in my classroom, I'm doing 2 things. I'm going back to 3rd grade, and then I'm bringing them up to college level. Right? So that's a fine comb, and that's my responsibility as the instructor of the class. Also, I need to question the practices that my institution has or that my department has, and what we are doing to unintentionally give advantage to students that already have some sort of advantage in the classroom, right? Can we give them a learning material that is different? Do we need to, I'm not ever gonna ask you to lower the quality of your class, but can we use resources that are slightly different? I remember I was teaching basic clothing in Spanish. You know, it's one of the first chapters. We need to learn how to express what we're wearing, things like that. And for some reason, all the pictures that the book had were not crossing to the student. I actually went to Pinterest, of all places, and found some K-12 exercises for my students in class, and brought some pencils and colors, and we started doing worksheets in the classroom, and they immediately got it. So I'm not asking you to lower the level of education that your students are getting. That's absolutely not the case, but maybe making a little bit more interactive and more interesting for the students. And designing new access and opportunities for those who have not an equal access or opportunity. So this is where institutional help comes in. Is there a club or a group on campus that can provide you with some resources for engagement? And I'm gonna talk a little bit more about this later on. So why is equity in the classroom especially, why is providing that equity so hard? Because gaps are not, they do not just appear the moment that student comes into campus at our college. That is not the case. Those gaps start very, very early. Those gaps are gonna start probably in 3rd grade. So there are 3 M's in American education for inequities. And one of course, the first one is money. So students in poverty are gonna do worse in our classroom than students that come from wealthy backgrounds. So if you look at the line, can I move this? Black and Hispanic students are gonna be a lot poorer than white, non-Hispanics, and other students of other race. So that means they might live in an area that doesn't have, like we talked about, reliable transportation. They might live in government housing, and or in areas that have higher levels of crime. Again, this is a generalization. This is not the case for everybody. So money is going to be a huge gap for those students. Achievement gap for students, like I said, it's going to start at about 3rd grade. We're going to start seeing those issues. If you studied in the humanities, or you do any research on behavioral issues, there's a pyramid, and that's the Maslow pyramid of needs. If your basic needs are not met, you cannot get to self-actualization, which is at the top of the pyramid. So if you don't have a safe home, if you don't have, again, reliable transportation, if you're not sure where your meals are going to come from, getting to know about quadratic equations is the last thing that you're going to be interested in. If surviving your walk to school or your drive to campus is more important, then you're going to have, you're not going to be able to pay attention in class. If you have to work, 60 hours a week, because in the majority, not the majority, a good percentage of students in community colleges work while they are attending school because they have to assist with paying, or because they have family bills, or they have to take care of a parent or a child. Those students are gonna be sleeping in class. So trying to understand the background of those students in order for you to do better with them in the classroom, that's also gonna be important. So instead of, I'm not saying don't get mad. These are decisions that the students need to make. If they're falling asleep in the classroom, have a conversation with them, ask them to change their schedule if that works for them. Talk to them about tutoring possibilities, or actually moving to a class online, and provide them resources that are available for them when they are on campus, and they can do and they can use that time to meet with a tutor instead of being in class. This was very interesting. I found this, there's a page called educationdata.org, and it just pulls a lot of information about dropout rates and the college completion gap. 9% of students of, so it's in the lowest quartile. Most students from a higher income complete college at a 54% rate. Students in minority groups only finish college at a 9% rate. So that is a humongous gap. If you look at the graph on the left, it says percentage of college dropouts by ethnicity. At two-year institutions have a larger dropout rate than four-year colleges. And that is because four-year colleges, they may have scholarships because of sports, or they might, once you make the financial and time constraint to go to a four-year college, you tend to have a lot more opportunity. If you get accepted to college, it's because you have had better grades in high school. Maybe you have some sort of ability that allowed you to go into a four-year school. But in two-year schools, especially at community colleges where we have open access, students come because that's what they tell them to do, because we provide scholarships. Like the state of Tennessee, in my state, we have what is called Tennessee Promise, which any high school student that graduates from a high school in the state of Tennessee can come to college for free for those first 2 years. But there are certain caveats to that. They need to have a full load. So if you cannot come to college on a full load of 15 credit hours in order to finish by those 2 years, you're not going to be able to receive that financial aid. So if I have to work and have to take care of a family, or I have a sick family member, or whatever other issue, and I cannot have a 15-hour credit load, then I cannot come to school. If I fail my classes, I stop receiving. So if I don't have enough of a background from high school and I come to college and I happen to fail basic statistics because I don't have a good background in math, then I lose my scholarship and I need to pay from then on. So how can we create those, how can we help the students that are gonna need to close that gap? The second M in those 3 M's of the American educational system is that most colleges, educational colleges, are built on a Northern European base of merit. Individuals are responsible for their own success, which everybody should be responsible for their own success, but we also need to take into account what the background of the student is. This idea of myself holding on from the bootstraps and lifting myself up is very interesting, but what if I don't have bootstraps, and what if I don't have boots? What if I never was given shoes to start with, right? Education is the great equalizer, but it is a great equalizer for only those who have the opportunity, unfortunately. And the third one is this monoculture where there are not enough faculty members that look like our students. If you look at this graph, 73% of faculty members at 2- and 4-year colleges are white. 9.3% are Asian, 5.7% are Black, and only 4.7% are Hispanic. That is actually not, it does not look like our society looks. It looks very different. So we need to create institutions in which faculty look more like the cities and the communities that we live in. So what are we doing in our institutions to create a better space for those students? Do we have extracurricular activities for students? We have seen that clubs and student associations create a lot more engagement for students than any other extracurricular activity. Honor societies also fall under this. Let me give you an example from my institution. One of my faculty members, one of my colleagues, not my faculty member, I'm sorry, one of my colleagues started a sci-fi fantasy guild about 10 years ago. We didn't have that club before. And immediately as it started, she had 300 students interested in joining. That was about 8% of the student body. That is humongous. And they had regularly between 30 and 50 students congregated to have meetings with the Sci-Fi Fantasy Guild. These were students that had very few friends on campus. They were the oddball kids here, but they found a place, and many of them actually thrive. In my institution, we didn't have an LGBTQ club until 2010, so 10 years ago as well. We started the LGBT club on campus, and we started having a lot of activities on campus. We started being a lot more prominent in the activities that we did on campus, and it created a culture of engagement for the students that really helped them stay in college because they had a support system inside. We have a Black Student Association that is very engaged here too, and it's getting stronger every year. But in order to do that, you need to have a faculty member that has enough time and enough patience to work with these clubs, because they have meetings, they are events on campus. It is not easy. So that's the easy part, is having these extracurricular activities. The hardest part is that we need coordinated services. We need coordinated services where tutors are not only available 8 to 4:30, where we have tutors that can meet with students in the evenings on campus or on weekends. I can tell you my institution does not have that because we do not have enough institutional support to provide those tutors. And of course, targeted mentoring. We just started a couple of mentoring programs for low-income students and students with disabilities too, to where we have support systems on campus specifically for them. We have peer mentors, and we also have a lead mentor. We have 2 young people working here on campus full-time who meet with all these Promise students, the Tennessee Promise students, and help them if they are having issues to complete their classes. They also are very well trained on what resources the campus has in order to send students to those resources. And I added an article here that it could be of interest to you about engagement for African American and Hispanic students at white institutions. And you know, what resources can we use in the classroom? I have made a little sheet here about the resources available. You know, about keep a stereotype thread in mind. So what is a stereotype thread? Is this idea we talked about women not doing well in a STEM. So there are some tools here. Let me see if this will open and if it will share. These are some resources of strategies to reduce a stereotype threat in the classrooms. So remove cues that trigger worries about stereotypes, convey that diversity is valued, create a critical mass, create fair tests, present them as fair and as serving a learning purpose. I don't know if you can see that, but we will continue. Oh, where did my PowerPoint go? It closed my PowerPoint, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened there. Okay, let me go back since it closed.
Yeah, well, while you're looking for it,
Here it is.
Come back up. A couple of people I know asked if you'd be okay with sharing.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I made this PowerPoint precisely for sharing.
All right, yeah. So I don't think it matters that that other document was so small. Then people will be able to.
Oh yeah, no, they will be
later.
able to see, and I will provide all of this, and I made sure to have hyperlinks to all of it so that people could access these toolkits. What is this? So keep stereotype threat in mind. Pay attention to your time. So pay attention how much time you are spending with each student. Are you spending more time with your good students, or are you trying to be equitable in the time you spend with other students? Try to partner really good students with other students that are not doing very well in class. You probably have done this already. You know, every good teacher does this. Make groups that are a little more equitable. And because when students have to explain things to each other, that is the best way for them to learn. Provide students with the ability to learn at their own pace. This doesn't mean that you give them extensions on exams or give them extensions on homework, but if you know what their background is and that they don't have access to these learning materials at home, or don't have internet, or don't have computers, you know, that might create the opportunity to provide those students time, some extra time on the labs, or some extra time on certain exercises. Let me see if this kicks me out again. I hope it didn't. I don't think it did. So the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics has this really good resource about equity in the classroom. I hope you can see. No, it's still showing my PowerPoint. Let me try to fix that.
Right now, I'm not sure that, well, I can't see your PowerPoint right now at all. So I'm guessing.
I stopped sharing.
Okay, I thought maybe you thought that you reshared and then didn't, but.
I'm just gonna share my screen, so you're gonna be able to see all the things that I have here. So this was the PowerPoint on the strategies to reduce the stereotype threat. So I'm gonna share this with you. Where is that other toolkit? This reflecting, noticing, in community. We're gonna open that hyperlink, and it's this one. It's what are classroom practices that support equity-based and mathematical teaching. So it talks about reflecting, understanding student identities, noticing what their identities are, and then engaging in the classroom community. So that's part of it. There are some toolkits for these come from the University of Arizona, inclusive techniques for teaching in the classroom. You know, there's really good tools for disabled veterans, frameworks and strategies, navigating diversity in the classroom, safeguarding against unconscious bias. This is very important. And don't be afraid to go to K-12 resources, sometimes because they receive a lot more funding than community colleges. And there's a lot more research on K-12 learning than there is in community colleges. You might be able to find really good resources there. And I think that not reinventing the wheel is important. Let me tell you a story, because I'm really good at telling the stories. A faculty member, no, let me come back. A student comes into my office and tells me that she's extremely upset about what they are reading in their English class, which is always an issue. And I'm like, okay, what are you reading? And they said, well, we're reading Huckleberry Finn. And I said, oh, well. The student was a Black student, and she was extremely upset about the use of the N-word in the book. And I said, I completely understand what your issue is. And I said, well, did the professor explain that this was satire? And she said, no. And I said, so how did the professor explain that this was going to be read and that you were going to be reading in class? And she said, there was no background. He just said that this is something we read in college and we just need to do it. Well, when I talked with the faculty member, it was the first time the faculty member was trying to teach Huckleberry Finn in class. This was about a year ago, because he really thought that we needed to read more text that talk about the differences between African American and white students, and he thought that Huckleberry Finn would be great. Well, he didn't feel comfortable teaching it. And if you don't feel comfortable teaching something, then don't. But, no, that came out wrong. Let me repeat that. If you don't feel comfortable teaching something or explaining something, don't do it yourself. That's what I meant to say. Don't reinvent the wheel. There are so many resources out there, from Henry Louis Gates to Ava DuVernay to TED Talks to hundreds of other resources of people who have explained why reading Huckleberry Finn is important and what satire is and why this satire was so important. So when I talked to the faculty member and I said, why didn't you show some of these resources before you made the students read about this? He thought that everything that he needed to do in the classroom was original content and that he needed to explain how to do this. But again, this idea of not reinventing the wheel and actually looking for resources outside of the classroom is important. And I see that there's a chat question, but I cannot read it. So once again, do not reinvent the wheel. I found this math toolkit that I thought it was interesting for your resources, but I also provided you a list of resources that are specifically on racism, because that's what we're talking about in the classroom lately. The American Associations of University Professors has really good toolkits. Vanderbilt, they have the Kennedy Center for Teaching Excellence. They have wonderful resources as well. Teaching Tolerance, this one right here. Teaching Tolerance is a tool for K-12 students, but I use it at the college level. I have used it many times. They have wonderful videos and resources for the classroom that are free to faculty members. Actually, if you can ask your librarians to request some of these resources, they are absolutely free. Wheaton College, Edutopia. This page, Academics for Black Lives, had really good resources for addressing racism in the classroom. And of course, University of Connecticut, Inside Higher Ed had really good resources. This page right here is very interesting. It's called Teaching While White. It has really good resources about understanding the privilege and the intersectionality of privilege in the classroom. So if you're interested, I gave you links to all of those. That is my presentation. Again, I think the issue of equity in the classroom is one that is being talked about and discussed at length. I don't think any of us can decide to reinvent the wheel. And it just depends on which resources you can use, or you want to use, or you feel comfortable using. At this point, I would like to hear from you, because I like conversation a lot more than I like just lecturing here in front of the classroom per se.
I guess one thing that I've been wondering about is, I think we all live in an empire that has some combination of lack of discipline and pre-existing inequity that has caused us not to control a pandemic.
Yes.
And the switch to remote learning that probably most of us will do has a very good chance of making inequity worse in the short term. And I just was wondering what other people were doing to try to mitigate that.
I think this should be a discussion in between all of us, because I can tell you I shouldn't be criticizing, especially if this is being recorded, but I feel that my institution, because cases have been so low in East Tennessee, we keep getting them higher and higher every day, but transmission has been so low in East Tennessee that we are ready to come back, and they have asked us to keep at least 30% of our classes on ground. Of course, we want to provide resources to students, and I have kept, in my division, we have kept learning support classes as face-to-face. But those learning support students are also the students that have a lot of other barriers already. So I don't think the institutional response has been as good. But I can also understand the plight of our administrators. It also depends on who your governor is and what the rules of your state are. So I would like to hear from people who are not here in Tennessee and what your institutions or states are doing.
Hi, this is Sandy Johnson. I'm at Eastern Michigan University in Southeast Michigan, and so far we don't know what's going to happen. They tell us that we're going to be mostly remote in the fall, but they won't give us any details just yet.
Wow.
So one of the things that I'm planning to do is, keep a much closer eye on who is actually completing the online work and who is not, and reach out to those students. When we're doing face-to-face classes, I always give extra credit for students to come to my office hours so I can get to meet them and know them.
Mhm.
So I plan to do that as well with my Zoom office hours, and hopefully, have one-on-one conversations with my students and learn more about their backgrounds so that I hopefully can find out what barriers they have and try and help them with that.
That is absolutely excellent. That's precisely what we are to do. But one of my faculty members, who is very thoughtful about things of inequity because she grew up very poor, mentions that, for homeless students or students that do not have a safe home environment, that having those Zoom meetings, maybe from home or from a restaurant, is not available to them because they might not have internet connection anywhere else, right? And if you have Zoom meetings with them from home, that might not be an environment that the students want to share. Right now, we're very tight on what we can do. So sometimes, I don't know if there would be any other resources that we could provide instead of Zooming with them. I think right now that's the option we have and we need to utilize it, but what other ways can we provide for our students in order not to encounter that issue?
If I could answer that, I did think about that. And so I've considered, giving out my phone number, and I'd be interested in hearing what other people say, because in the past I have not given out my cell phone number to students. But one thing I do is I do use, the word's escaping me, but you probably know it. It's called, it starts with an R, but it's
Remind
a tool.
app?
Yeah.
The Remind app, okay.
Yeah, and so, in there you can do texting with students through the app, and you don't have to give your cell phone number. So that's another possibility. But you're right. If they're having issues, they might not have a situation where they feel free to even talk to you about it. So that's a definite problem.
Let me tell you what I did for the cell phone issue, because I had that issue as well. It's like, I don't want to give out my cell phone, but I also want the students to be able to communicate with me. And this is in no way a commercial for them, but you can download the Google app, and there's Google Voice, and you can actually select your own phone number, and it will, through the app, it will connect to your phone. So you will receive calls as if you were receiving a call from your friend. Right. But if students need to announce themselves, they actually have to say their name, and you can pick up or not pick up depending on whether you have time or don't want to pick up. That's up to you. And the nice thing about the Google app is that you can change your phone number every semester.
Oh, that's good. That makes sense.
I don't know if anyone else has other options. There's another app very similar to Remind called, name escapes me now. It's not debate, it's not argument. It's a synonym. Oh, I will look it up and tell you in a second.
Somebody in the text said GroupMe.
GroupMe is really good too. Yeah, we use it. We used it in a fellowship with the Tennessee Board of Regents, and it was good. And it works. Google Teams works really well too. But they need either an app or a computer for that. The nice thing about Google Voice is that you can also text the students from the from this other phone number that you have. So you can text with them. You can do text and voice. I would really like to hear from other people. I would like to know what you're doing. Now, we talked a lot about background and race and mostly background and race, but if there are other things, like I mentioned, LGBTQ is my field of expertise in some sort. John, if there are no other
Yeah,
questions.
well, yeah. So I've been reading the comments about, and this is all
thank you.
nice about the texting. So, like David said about texting is not documented for the state, and so I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind like saying like if email is okay for documentation for the state.
Oh, that's,
in
yeah, I just saw
California.
that.
Because
Yeah.
I know that I really don't give out my cell phone number to students, but I do show them how to like go to their text messages, and I don't know if all of you know this, but instead of sending a text to a phone number, you can send a text to an email address. And so then that text message will come to my college email address and I can reply, and that will go to the student's text message, and I don't have to give out my number, and I don't have to check my phone separately from my email, and everything goes to the email account for me, and my reply will still go back to the student. So I would have all of that text message communication
And that would be a recorder for the people in California that have that issue.
Yeah, and the same thing, like my college uses Canvas also, like as David's college does, and if a student sends me a message in Canvas, I have that go to my email also. So instead of me having to check my phone messages and my email and the Canvas messages, they all come to my email, and in a way, like it actually makes it quicker for me to respond to students, helping them in the long run, because I'm only checking for messages from them in one place. So I don't know, like, if that's a strategy that would work for others as well. Like, just try to get everything to come to you in one place so that you can reply to students a little bit faster, hopefully, and then that would make time for you to try to take care of some of these other items that may come up in connecting with students and trying to meet them in their needs, even though it's remotely right now. So
there is a way on D2L Brightspace in which but the problem is students have to go to the settings on Brightspace and actually add their cell phone and their personal email. But when you do, and they can check which type of communications they want to get. And the problem is, if they're getting every single communication in your class, that means that every time you change a file on your D2L, they get a text message. If you edit something on your page, they get a message. But if you ask them and actually teach them on the first day of class and make them do it while they are in class, if they check off all those marks and only get the announcements or emails, they will get a text message when you post announcements in your D2L or when you send them an email. But that is a one-way communication, unfortunately. It's not a two-way communication.
Yeah, and so I feel like if like a lot of the conversation here has been about how we're going to communicate with students, especially since we won't necessarily be seeing a lot of students in person this fall and for the foreseeable future, like how to deal with some of these inequities. And I guess, like I know there were some comments earlier about the video in the chat, but a lot of them were about how students don't have access to even homes or food or shelters sometimes, and how students might not be able to afford their bills, and so
Let
I
me,
think that,
I'm going to share something with you because I'm reading some of the comments, and I'm going to share my, my institution. We have a program called Student Needs. Let me share my, my screen here. So this is the Student Needs Project, and it's just northeaststate.edu campus-resources student needs project. It's kind of tricky to get there, but if you Google it, it's easy. The contact information is here. I don't know if you have this problem, but I don't like my institution's webpage. But we have a lot of community resources. So we have a food pantry on campus, and that was the project of several faculty members that put together some work, and they got together with the Second Harvest Food Bank, and we have, again, a food bank on campus for students who need, and it's full of snacky things or things that are easily ready to eat. We have tables around the campus with soups and things that they can heat up in the microwave here on campus. But we also have the Second Harvest Food Bank come to every single one of our campuses once a month. And they provide 40 pounds of food to students in need. They just need to fill out an application. It doesn't require anything. They just need to bring their own basket, and they get sent home with 40 pounds of food. And we also give them some resources. The other thing that we do, and this is what my department does, this is not an institution-wide issue, is we provide period pads and tampons and things like that in the bathrooms in our building. So the faculty members actually have it on their, they bring them once a month, and the bathrooms are just across from my office. So whenever we go to use the restroom and we see that those are low, I have an entire stack of pads and tampons and period products in my office for students in the bathrooms. And we really don't mind if they just, disappear in a couple of days, because we know that there's a lot of need for that. But that's something that we do individually on campus, but it's not institutionalized. And what the Student Needs also did is they have community resources, and they are separated by, wow, do I need to click 5 times? I guess I do. Here we are. So alcohol and drug treatment, bilingual resources, childcare, clothing, domestic violence, emergency shelters. So we keep updating this list for everybody that needs something. And we actually have a gender and sexual diversity section. I still get calls of why we have to put this on our resources, but I make sure to update that monthly.
Yeah, so I know my college has resources like this as well, but and I know that I saw Jeff, you made a comment in the chat that like even colleges that offer certain resources usually may not have as many resources available right now, like even if it means like limited hours or the donations have been limited. So I think that like, even though it like a part of me really believes that it like it knows it would be better to have a lot of things institutionalized, I think that more than ever, the individual support of from an instructor to a student is just of utmost importance. And you know, like I know that I said in the chat that one of my former students last year had problems because she had a old lives in an old home, and it has a boiler which is extremely expensive to replace. And my college has a SOS program, but that didn't really provide the immediate heat in the home, because it's a program, an application process that you have to go through. And so I had bought 3 space heaters, and so I just drug one over to the college and let her have it, and she still has it. But you know, like I was talking to her in class one day, and the issue was that, like, she said, well, I am doing okay without the heat as much as I can, but I'm actually concerned about my dog. Mm-hmm. And so my dog, we have to put in the little porch, and there's absolutely no heat out on the porch. And so, like, I really would like to keep my dog warm. And I said, take this space heater, put it on your porch, and keep your dog warm. And having her, like, for her, like, having her pet nice and safe was one of the things that she needed to take her mind off of things, so that she could focus a little bit on her schoolwork that she wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. So, like, the college, even though they have a program to help students, they couldn't have, like, provided the support at that level. So it's going to take the, like, individual stepping up and really getting to reach out to know the students to make a bigger change, especially now since we're all remote for the most part.
Yeah, one thing I did not touch on, and I think it's important to talk about in COVID times, is to also be patient with students who might have, I mean, with all students in general, because anxiety on COVID times has been affecting all of us, whether or not we think we're stressed because of COVID, and just the anxiety of knowing that you cannot go places, or that you need to quarantine, or that you cannot see family members because you might, employees that are still working might give it to parents or family members. So I think being patient with ourselves and with our students is important during these times.
Just to sort of move to get the conversation onto the teaching resources and equity. I know that one thing our college has done is we've got a plan for the order in which we're going to dissect our labs that have laptops to create loaner computers.
Yes.
Now the students still have to get there, so there's still a little bit of a challenge, but if they can get to the campus, we can loan them a device. But some things that we haven't overcome that I would just love if someone else has, I don't think so because they're not easy, but is internet access. If a student has to share with a ton of people, do they have easy internet access? And then another issue is sometimes the equity for our part-time faculty. We have lots of we have a lot of supports where full-timers. I can buy myself a new monitor and probably get it reimbursed, but our part-time faculty, unless we use our CARES Act money wisely, I don't know how we're going to support them.
Thank you for mentioning that. For me, it has been not only allowing the students to take computers at home, but my adjunct faculty, because they rely on the computers that they have here on campus on our labs to do a lot of the work, right? And we don't pay them enough for them to purchase a laptop if we're going home during COVID. So one of the requests I haven't received any information yet, was to, so we're gonna allow full-time faculty to take their computers home. if they want to or they need to. So that is not an issue, but we didn't know what to do with computers. So my request, which has not been answered yet, is to, since we have to socially distance in the computer labs anyway, the best way would be to take those computers out, take some computers out in order to provide for space, and allow adjunct faculty to take those computers. They are desktops, and they will need to return them to school, and the laptops can go to students, but our adjunct faculty could take some of those desktops home for the semester.
So, like my college actually has somehow for the adjunct faculty, and actually all faculty, we got an email like, and part of this all started because earlier this year, I know that my department has certain funds that we have to spend before the end of the fiscal year. So I said, instead of buying like calculators this year, like we usually do, we should buy some document cameras and lend them out to adjunct faculty who need them to teach at home. And so I got email back like a couple months later, oh, well, we found enough money for 5 of them. And then like a couple months later, I get another email saying, well, like we're going to give every faculty member at the college either a laptop or a tablet or a document camera, or there's like a 4th option, but like everyone can pick one thing, and then we all submitted our request, and they said that they'll fulfill them and let us know the details on how to pick up our item or have it shipped to us before the beginning of the school year. So I think that was a great move to try to give faculty, full-time and adjunct, some support there. And somehow the college also has, from my understanding, has laptops and hotspots available that they have can be like loaned out, or the student can purchase them with financial aid funds if they would like to own it themselves. And
That's
so
correct.
I think that's about the best that like you can do at the moment. I mean, there's also like my college is offering drive-up Wi-Fi, but that requires a student being able to get to the college and to have somewhere to sit in the middle of winter, like or else leave their car running. And I personally wouldn't want to like have to like be in that position for too long, but I can't, even count the number of times where I have had to drive up in front of a Starbucks to make sure that my GPS is working or whatever it might be. But you do have to get to campus in order for that to happen. And so it's a nice sentiment, but I do think that is an option for students who don't want to buy the hotspot or even lend it back and have to worry about getting it back later. If that those students can get to campus.
Yeah, that's excellent. John, anything else that you wanna?
No, yeah. So I was going to say that I think that we like went back and sort of discussed like an overall view of the comments and everything that you shared with us today. But I think that I will make sure to get the PowerPoint and the resources from you.
Yes, I will send that to you right away.
And then I'll share the recording in case there was something that was said that maybe somebody wanted to relive the last hour and 20 minutes or so. And I really appreciate the presentation, and thank you again, Fran, and thank everyone for being here. And I hope everyone has a nice rest of your day. And if you're coming for the presentation, another like 40 minutes or so, that you have a nice lunch.